Hey, welcome to the show, guys. Interesting weekend. I think, it was an interesting weekend if you're watching the news, that's for sure. This is Council on Future Conflict, episode 453. I think our show on Friday was Syria's falling, and now it's Syria fell and the coming storm. The coming storm is a domestic focused topic. So we'll be talking about some of the things that are developing. Always nice to see people chatting from the X platform as they watch us live. Thank you. Yep. X live chats from X. Yes. I just want to make sure you know that we can see you. All right. Joe, how you doing today, brother?
I'm well and good. Had a good time this weekend, hanging out at the gun show, meeting some fans, and chatting with like-minded people throughout the Flathead River Valley or Flathead Lake Valley. A lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool people. A lot of folks just realized that the camp was there and running, and it's one of those things where, like, you think you didn't have a good weekend, but you don't know how many people are going to end up signing up for classes because they found your thing there. And I met a guy who is from Germany and then had moved to New Hampshire, so he had a very interesting our accent. So just interesting, a lot of fun. We had a good time hanging out all weekend. And if you had been in the area, you would have found that Mrs. Tactical Wisdom is indeed a real person and she does exist. So
I heard rumor around the campfire, Joe, is that she finally found an AR-15 that works for her.
She very well may have. That's how you get new AR-15s is you tell the wife, hey, check this out. And
This one's special.
ran a little Jedi mind trick, and she now got herself a new rifle. So good for her.
Very cool. Now what you need is like the pink handguard or something like that. Let her.
Oh no, she would. That's not her thing. Yeah, no.
She works at the with her. Well, not working. But I don't know. Maybe she does it. The hobby shop or the Hobby Lobby or whatever.
Well, that's what she works at Michael's. She no longer works at Michael's. So.
She could customize that sucker with some of her hobby skills.
She certainly could. So, Rowan, yeah, the pink AR is mine. Yeah. This one. Let me just, for the record, point out this is not a pink one. We did not buy a pink AR. So, anyway, onward and upward, I guess we shall say. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even if it's not pink in appearance, it is it's the woman's AR, so you could call it the Pink Lady just as a code name or something.
We were messing around and she did one of her kicks, so she's really good at kicking, right? And she goes, man, I do Tung Sudo. I should be doing Taekwondo with my kicks. I'm like, yeah, that's a great idea. No.
Pink real tree.
You know what, Chris, or first responder, sorry. There was a guy who was there walking around with a pink Realtree Ruger 1022 that he was trying to sell, and I told him that. I said, "Hey, the rifle is really your color," and he goes, "Ha ha, you're a funny guy." I said, "I'm not the one walking around with a pink rifle slung over my shoulder, bro. You are."
Yeah, I like this one. Scott's telling Mrs. Dolio to bedazzle her AR. Is this the white woman version of a weed rifle?
Yeah. I don't think there's any risk of her bedazzling much of anything. So.
Well, Joe, have you seen the weed rifles? These invariably they've turned up in all kinds of corners of the world, and they've got like stickers of like anime girls and things like that on the magazines and on the butt stocks. Have you seen these?
First of all, they're called slaps, not stickers, and no.
No. Slaps are something that you do to your wife when she gets out of line. Stickers are things that.
Not in my house. You don't. No. So.
I just kidding. Yes, slaps are a child's word, Joe. We don't go. Nobody in the '80s called them slaps when we were actually putting on skateboards.
And now you're going to tell me hot dogs aren't called glizzies, right?
Well, they're not called doggos. That's for damn sure. Who knew you were so liberal in your private life?
Well, you never know. You never know.
That's right. You never do know. All right, Watch. Are you finally back on the?
Yeah, I think so. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, and we can hear your girlfriend there too.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, we hear you, but not your companions. So, all right. Cool.
Yeah, damn goats. Apologies to chat. Bunch of baby goats got moved next to the shed where I do broadcasting from. So they're all crying for their mother.
Go with that.
In fairness, me and Joe were making jokes about him having solidarity with all those poor Syrian soldiers. So he's taking care of their goats over the weekend. But, in fact, he is actually doing the right thing for his job, which is on a farm. So,
well, they're all going to be crying a lot more after they get castrated later. So, fun times.
Yes. Being Gen X is venerable.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is now at this point, we keep getting called boomers. We are not boomers.
We're not boomers, right? We invented calling old people and boomers, right? So.
Oh, no. Real quick, Steve, I want to clarify. The goats and I are not friends. After being asked to move 20 goats from one stall to another and having the task take over 2 hours yesterday, I am on team slit the fucking goats' throats. That's where I'm at.
The goat and I are just friends. Okay.
I've been there. Those goats are just generally loud. So I feel for you, Watcher. I do.
I don't know. Anything else we need to let the folks know about before we jump into?
I will let know that the goats down there have been whining and crying ever since Don left. So I'll allow them all to talk.
I'll allow it.
How's Don doing? Have we heard anything about him in his situation lately?
Well, we're in a holding pattern until January 20th is what we're.
Well, evidently, the good news is it sounds like no matter what happens, if January 20 comes along and Donald Trump becomes the president, Don will be in a much better situation. So,
well, that's why the government keeps trying to rush them all into taking plea deals before then. So.
Yeah, it's much better to have the charges dropped after the fact than to plead guilty and then have to get a pardon.
Well, and that's the whole thing, right? A lot of guys might say, "Well, I'll just plead guilty and then I'll get a pardon." Don't do that, because if you plead guilty before then, they will come and take all of your guns. You will not get them back after a pardon. So,
yeah.
Good luck ever getting your guns back from any agency after they've been taken. So
yeah, that's exactly right. Unless you have some kind of aquatic boat accident prior to the plea deal. All right. I'm sorry, I was just kind of catching up on the chat here. All right.
The best one is that Watchers.
I do have to say, but yeah, before I was literally about to highlight that. Yes, I don't mind the cows, but I'm fully now aware of the reason goats started being eaten in the first place, which was "fuck you, goat, you die today."
Well, I like how sheep are absolutely too stupid to live.
Factual.
MLS relocation specialist. I like that one. That was pretty good.
Well, my favorite is the sheep who he's down in the trench or whatever. A kind of like a 1 foot wide trench. He's stuck down in there, and they pull him out, and he's like, "Oh, I'm free! I'm free! I'm free!" And he literally runs and falls right back into the trench and goes right back where he started.
It's like sheep.
I think that these the Syrians and various others in that region of the world took the term goat husbandry a little too far.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Factual. Actually, it's funny. Yesterday when we were moving the goats, one of the other workers here was just making random noises at him, and I was like, "Hey, careful! If that starts sounding a little too much like Arabic, the goats might get excited."
Android says, damn, my fellow Zoomers, these CFC video podcasts slap. Now, I think my daughter told me that we cook is what she told me.
Which is coming full circle because she originally said, I can't believe people watch you two.
That's right. Anyway, all right, let's jump right into it, shall we, gents? I'm very proud of this first odds and ends, and it may not be creating more conflict in the world, but it's bringing awareness to conflict that has existed for a long time and needs more awareness. If there's any kind of thing that needs more awareness of, it's not all these racial affinity groups or old man stubbed his toe on this day in history day. It's this. The House overwhelmingly passes Crucial Communism Teaching Act. On December 6th, the House passed the Crucial Communism Teaching Act with a vote of 327 to 62, which that in of itself is heartening. Yeah. The bill introduced by Representative Maria Elvira Salazar, Republican from Florida, and co-sponsored by 33 House members, seeks to address a gap in the education system related to the history of communism. Communism was one of the most destructive political ideologies the world has ever seen, Representative Salazar said. The Crucial Communism Teaching Act is important because youth must remember the crimes of communists, including those inflicted upon my constituents and their families in the Florida's 27th district. And she first brought this bill up in September of 2021. The fact that it's taken this long to pass it is a crime in of itself.
Well, the communism wasn't inflicted on them when they were her constituents, though. So,
that's true. But if you have victims of communism in your constituency, you could say that. Hey, welcome to Cannon Hotel. Hey, brother, how you doing? Long time no see.
Hey, good morning, Cannon.
And if we may bring attention to something real quick, if you're not a watch viewer of Cannon Hotel, apparently the man got struck down for literally reporting the news.
What?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, he got a community strike for medical disinformation, even though what he was saying was literally just quoting the news.
No, you gotta be kidding me. And anyway, all right. That's just talking about that's just gonna make me upset. All right. Specifically, the bill seeks to educate American students that communism has led to the deaths of over 100 million victims worldwide, and that 1.5 billion people still suffer under communism. Ahead of the vote, Representative Danny Burgess warned that many youth have been taught to see communism as something desirable, noting that a recent report indicated that half of Gen Z students were unaware of the Chinese Communist Party is responsible for more deaths than Nazi Germany. Yeah, by a large margin.
Yeah, but it's not even close.
Yeah, and then second to that would then be maybe communist Russia, and then Nazis are maybe third or fourth, maybe. He also, not to minimize anything the Nazis did, but it's kind of like you got to put them right next to each other. They are equivalent.
The only reason why the Cubans aren't on that list is because they live on a small island.
Well, right. They just don't have enough people to actually kill but as a percentage of their total population, they were murderous bastards.
You know what's my favorite part of this? You know who's going to be forced to teach this? It's going to be, because they've mostly gotten rid of history classes, right? So it's almost definitely going to be some humanities fucking leftist, blue-haired, and watching them choke back tears as they're forced to talk to the kids about the killing fields of Cambodia is
I'll be honest. You got to think about the example of Pol Pot and Cambodia and be like, how bad did you have to be that the Vietnamese were like, bro, you need to dial it back?
Yeah, I know, right?
But I'm with Dyadic on this. Much as I approve of this message, I don't want yet another federal mandate on education that is local. 100%. And Dabber Dan, as far as killing commies for mommies, You might not know this, but during the A-10 training program, that's how they teach people how long a burst from the gun can be.
Die, commie, die.
Die.
All right, continuing on. America's students deserve to know the truth. Communism is not a promise for a more equitable future. It's a brutal ideology that runs counter to democracy and the very principles our nature was founded upon. Exactamundo.
All this is going to do is it's going to make the teachers do the bare minimum while explaining that that's why it's proof that it's never been properly applied.
Yeah, here's the thing. If you want to be a communist in the privacy of your own home, right? If you want to espouse communist views on social media platforms that will let you do that, to your heart's content on your private time, knock yourself out. But I honestly believe that any class that teaches Marxism of any form in any kind of valid sense, or you are an avowed communist, you should be completely ineligible to teach our children. This doesn't even kind of come up as a question to me. This is that should be the going in position. I'm a little strident when it comes to bring back
facts. Look, I don't know about bring back. Like, as far as I know, it's still technically illegal.
Yeah, it's still illegal
to
get a security clearance if you're a member of the Communist Party, no matter what.
I don't know if that's true. I think they got rid of those questions. I think they only focus on because first of all, Joe, you got to remember, communists are stupid, right? I mean, you have to be stupid to be communist. So most of these stupid morons had no idea that just agreeing with communism means you agree with the idea of the overthrow of the American system, right? Now, so they eliminate the communist question because all those morons had no clue. And then they just focus on, have you ever been a member of a group that advocated the overthrow of the United States government? And then they could say, like, oh, yeah, I never did that.
Do you know what group advocated the overthrow of government? The United States government.
Yeah.
And yeah, Jay Clark, that's where I was going before Scott interrupted me, despite what happened with Brennan. Anyway.
He's watching what you doing. Are you like lifting weights?
Sorry. I thought I was muted. No, I'm moving my desk a little bit.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Moving on to the next story.
Well, I just wanted to kind of close this one out. During the floor debate ahead of its passage, Representative Bobby Scott, a Democrat, said the bill was narrowly tailored and did not address more important issues such as achievement gaps and affordable education. Oh, okay.
So in other words, they want to teach communism. It's a good thing.
Yeah, Scott also said the bill skirts around key historic lessons because it did not mention fascism directly, because it's not about fascism. We already talk about fascism all the time. And we called our president fascist. Or teach about the House Un-American Activities Committee.
He's right in a certain way. We really should teach more about fascism, and the fact that it's literally an offshoot of communist ideology. I think more people should be educated as to the etiology and origins of fascism.
It is by its definition a socialist movement. Let's see. He says it should talk about the House Un-American Activities Committee, the initiative associated with former Senator Joseph McCarthy. Not true. Senator Joseph McCarthy was a member of the Senate. The House Un-American Activities Act is in the House of Representatives.
And when you track the people involved,
directly associated with that, he had other hearings within the Senate, but those were Senate hearings.
Yup, and the reason why they want to conflate the two is because the Senate hearings only actually went after avowed communists, whereas the House Un-American Activities Committee largely was communists going after people who were seen as not loyal enough to the Communist Party.
I mean, Joe, what was your kind of understanding about all that Joseph McCarthy stuff back in, like when you were kind of learning first about it? I mean, it's all negative, right?
Yeah, it was painted as a negative and as a witch hunt, but it turns out McCarthy was right. So,
I mean,
the
so
reason why they painted it that way, right? They needed to paint him as a kook and a right-wing conspiracy theorist. Huh? Boy, does this sound familiar at all? Because they were literally doing exactly what he said they were doing.
So first of all, his committee was the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. The communists were our enemy. The communist nations of the world stood directly opposed to us during the Cold War, i.e., Russia and the Eastern European communist governments. McCarthy and his committee, they did uncover individuals with communist affiliations and sympathies within specifically government agencies. Not like, hey, we're just going to go after Hollywood, commies or something like that. They convicted people within the State Department. They convicted people with the Defense Department. I mean, was there a exaggeration of scale of the Marxist penetration of these agencies and organizations? Maybe, the Red Scare maybe was as much a propaganda. No. Hey, hold on, because it's all about scale, right? If you've got one person in 1,000 that's a communist, then you can't say that most of these idiots are fucking communists, right? But now we live in giving up and demonizing people like poor Senator Joe McCarthy. We now have a CIA that is riddled with communists, specifically in the analyst branches that have grown enormously since the end of the Cold War.
Yeah, no,
look, your teacher in the chat who could probably talk about it, but
yeah, look,
you're just talking about your old office building.
Anyway,
McCarthy was self-evidently right.
Is that this will give the teachers a way to spin it and say they're talking about socialism, not communism. But Lenin said the goal of socialism is what? Communism.
Yeah, it's just the socialism is the kind of the government or is the economic model, whereas communism is a whole of government solution and how you get to a socialist economy.
I think that he actually meant that socialism is the nice way you package it, and communism is what you end up with. So,
yeah, one has a revolution, the other one doesn't.
Socialism is a marketing strategy for communism.
Yeah.
It sounds nicer. But anywho, let's move on to the next topic.
This is another interesting one. We've got some interesting stuff in the news these days. The thing that I'm worried about, we talked a little bit about this on Friday, and it was kind of like I wonder what happened with that. The thing I'm less interested in the killer at this point, Joe, and I'm more interested in these momos out there that are like literally, like applaud this guy for killing this, CEO in the street,
Well, what's funny is that while it's 95% a leftist thing, there are a certain number of right-wing people who are cheering this on too. And let me just point something out. There is a difference between killing in war and killing combatants and random murder of people simply because of the job they hold. And we should not be cheering this on. This was not a positive development. And if you say it's okay, if that section's okay for people you don't like, understand that pendulum swings both ways. It's not exclusive, right? It will then start happening on both sides. And if you look at the insurgency pyramid, the top line just below open armed conflict is targeted assassinations.
Yeah. I just want to say that there's goat memes in the CFC fan chat right now. Watcher, just letting you know that. All right. Let me jump into the story from Fox News. This is UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, murder suspect on the run for nearly a week. So he got shot on the 4th of December outside a hotel in New York City. John Miller, former NYPD commissioner for intelligence counterterrorism, told CBS News on Saturday that the hostile surveillance video of the person of interest is the most significant clue to date. The photo is the suspect reportedly happened after a woman asked him to see the suspect's pretty smile. A source told CBS they were having a flirtatious moment. He pulls his mask down. I mean, so this is just like this guy is just, some sort of, I don't know, Don Juan. Ex-FBI agent says he found this surprising about manhunt for a CEO killer. It says here that that nobody has come forward yet to identify the suspect believed to have killed him. I do find it surprising. They may have done it already to the police, but the police don't want to come out and say they actually have a name. But his immediate family members, if this is a crime of passion, and he did this based on a loved one dying of a lack of health care or denied health care, they may be more understanding of his plight than I think is eventually going to come out. I thought about something over the weekend, Joe, and I want to run this past you. This guy looks like he could maybe be a little on the ethnic side. Maybe he's not originally from the U.S. Maybe he is I won't say like a professional, because he clearly wasn't a professional, but maybe he's like a designated hitter, with no family ties within America. And he could literally just disappear in a hole somewhere and nobody would ever know. If I was
a designated hitter of any type for any reason, I would do better than the right calf at 10 feet.
Agreed.
I'm with you, brother.
Just throwing that out there.
You know how it is, though. Like the first time you get in a gunfight, nobody is 100% the first time they get shot at or they shoot at somebody, I think. So,
but he didn't get shot at. He was literally initiating an ambush, and there should have been no stress. I mean, but let me just make one comment first. I have to address something. No Pinochet helicopter source. It would not be different if it was Bill Gates. I'm not okay with just assassinating people. Now,
yeah. So here's the thing, right? I'm not an anarchist. I believe in the rule of law. I think there should be a lot less laws, but that being said, that doesn't mean there should be zero laws. I think everybody deserves their day in court. I think due process is very important.
Have a day or two in court.
Or two, trial today, execution tomorrow. Film at 11.
I'm certainly not down for just random assassinations on the street, because I know where that leads. The reason why this guy is still on the run after a week, despite the fact that if a grandma posted something on Facebook, she'd be arrested in 10 minutes, is because they're really not looking for him, right? I don't think there's as much enthusiasm here as there would be if, say, somebody else was targeted, right? I think that our federal law enforcement arms are so infiltrated that this isn't a high priority for them. And I get it. The NYPD is who is looking for him, but the NYPD doesn't have jurisdiction outside of New York City. So I guarantee you this guy's no longer in New York City, and he's not going to be found there. So you're going to have to rely on the federal agencies to go after him. And I really don't know that you're going to get that. It's like the guy who planted the bombs at the DNC and the RNC on January 6th, right? Now, what you should do is say, I think I saw this guy at the Capitol on January 6th waving a Trump flag. Then they'd probably find this guy in about 25 minutes.
Yeah, lickety split, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing has just kind of got me scratching my head, Joe. I mean, I don't know that there's any direct involvement by federal law enforcement or anything.
Let me add some head scratcher for you. We made a comment the other day about.
Can you not hear me, Watcher?
A little bit. Hold on.
I was talking like I was like, like
Mid-sentence.
15 words into a statement when you just kind of jumped right in. So I just assume you can't hear me because I know you wouldn't do that on purpose.
No, I'm having trouble hearing everybody. Let me fix that.
All right. Anyway, so I mean, I just don't think that they're like involved in the creation of this guy, though. I think you're right, Joe. I think that they could be involved in like, well, let's just not look too hard for him.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying they're involved in the creation of this guy. I think this is a lot like the Butler, Pennsylvania thing, right? Hey, here's this guy about to do this thing. Let's just not get in his way and remove every obstacle possible. And I think they're just like, well, maybe we can find him. Jay Clark mentions an interesting thing. Antifa's been targeting UnitedHealthcare for a long time. And the funny thing is that the people who came out right when this assassination happened and first said, no, this has to be a right-wing guy. From day one, Matt and I were both like, no, there's literally no way that's what this was. This guy had all the earmarks of an Antifa person. And that's where we are. It's like, just like everyone's saying, oh, he used this VP7 or whatever. That was debunked like 100 times, right?
Yeah.
This guy was obviously a leftist. Obviously, he was not very familiar with firearms. Didn't know how to manipulate it properly, and I don't know. But the reaction by the left is what you need to be paying attention to. They're absolutely 100% out there. And Pinochet, we're not going to go down that. We're not going to go down that path today. I've had that discussion with people all weekend. There's no justification. We're not doing it. So,
yeah. Here's the thing, right? Here's the thing about that is that if you go to a world where you advocate for that type of thought process, that's how you end up with somebody walking up behind you and capping you from the back of the head one day because they disagreed with something you said.
And
his opinion.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say his opinion's an existential threat to me and my family, so I had to end him.
So when you start going down that path of nullifying the jury box and the ballot box and all that stuff, Bill Gates would still not be an enemy combatant. So that's my thing. As a man and as a member, I guess, of a warrior class, I cannot just kill innocents or kill people who are not an active combatant. It's not in me. That guy deserves to face justice, but it's not my justice at the end of the barrel of my gun. It's the people's justice based upon some sort of a court system. It's not something I'm ever going to be able to do in my own head. It says thou shalt not murder, and I have no intention of murdering. So. And we all should be that way, just for the record.
I agree. I think that's like the most intellectually consistent way, right? You know.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah. Now,
I want to search off for me.
Before, though,
we should give it to you. Go ahead, Watcher.
Yeah, I think there's a delay or something. So before we had asked, like, hey, let's do a little research into why this guy might have got targeted. It's funny because UnitedHealthcare on the leftist side does appear to be like one of the most generous with, shall we call it, quote, transgender healthcare. They tend to, they have a full scale, still in effect, DEI program there at the C-suite level. I'm not saying this is evidence against the left having done it, because the fact that he was a healthcare CEO in the first place is enough to make him a target for them. But it's interesting that they went after him first.
Yeah. Well, here's my thought, Joe and Watcher. I'll be honest with you. I think, first of all, I think the nature of the victim is, that's all you need to know. I think who the motivations of the what motivations they hold, right? And this is clearly going anti-capitalist, now we may all agree that insurance companies suck or whatever, but it shouldn't be a death penalty, working for a company that makes decisions that you don't like. Now, I understand with healthcare decisions, a lot of times people's livelihoods are connected to that. But
I'll be honest, if it was honestly someone was upset about something that the healthcare company did, they would have wanted Thompson to see them. It would have been a face-on attack, not a from behind attack.
Yeah, especially if it's a personal connection.
Always face to face, right?
Yeah. All right. Anything else on this?
The guy may have been Iranian. I mean, that's actually a fairly good point. It goes with what you said, Scott.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the idea there is just that if it's somebody who's not connected to people in America, then ultimately you could kind of slide him in, do the job, get him out, and I don't recognize him. You know, looks a little like that guy Lenny I went to high school with, but I don't think it's him.
Yeah. The bigger piece of the story is the absolute cheering and all of that stuff being done by the left. They think this guy is a hero. He's become a new folk hero to them, and you should be paying attention to that. So,
exactly. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our third odds and ends here. Taiwan raises alert as China deploys 90 ships in likely exercises. Taiwan raised its alert level on Monday, saying that China has reserved airspace and deployed naval and Coast Guard vessels in what a security source called the first military drills across the broad swath of the region's waters. A senior Taiwan security official said that China had nearly 90 Navy and Coast Guard ships near Taiwan, the southern Japanese islands, and the eastern and South China Seas, of which 2/3 were naval. Of course, the Beijing Defense Ministry didn't have a comment. China, which claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory, has been expecting to launch another round of exercises in response to Taiwan President Lai Ching-te's trip to the Pacific. You know, Joe, the Chinese were not happy about that trip that he made to Hawaii and a couple other places.
Yeah, and this is always their reaction, right? They always throw up another drill, another provocation militarily. So, yeah, I would, if I was Taiwan, I would be worried. And again, the closer we get to a transition, the higher their risk is. I've been saying it for a long time. Xi Jinping has never had a better moment than right now.
I mean, I think you're right, Joe. I mean, as soon as Trump gets in office, it gets in much harder.
And in before someone tells me that, but the weather in the Taiwan Strait, bro, I'll say the same thing I've always said. Two things. Number one, that assumes Taiwan cares about the comfort of their sailors and Marines. They don't. It's a 13-hour sailing, not that big of a deal. And two, a basic tenet of Sun Tzu is to strike when you appear unable to strike. So I don't put as much faith in the weather argument as everyone else. Ships go through the Taiwan Strait every single day of the year. So,
yeah. Let's see. China did not immediately announce any specific weapons test or military zones. In August 2022, it fired missiles into waters around Taiwan during war games to protest a visit to Taipei from then U.S. Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Remember the halcyon days of 22 when the Democrats controlled everything and everybody, wait a second, I thought all that stuff was Donald Trump's fault. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The Taiwan official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said China's deployment was larger than previous two major drills around Taiwan this year. For the first time, they are targeting the entire island chain, the source said, referring to an area that runs from Japan through Taiwan and the Philippines and onto Borneo, enclosing the seas around China's coast. Watcher, I know you're a China kind of watcher. What's your take?
This is the same thing we've been saying for a long time. Like the blockade that actually brings down Taiwan is likely to just be labeled as an exercise in China. It will just be one of the escalating series of exercises aimed to keep fitness up in the Chinese Navy. The other funny thing here is that 90 naval ships and 2/3 of which were naval. So what you're saying is the other 30 were the Chinese naval militia. and those are also naval ships. Go figure. Weird.
Yeah.
Huh.
Now they're not what you'd call impressive ships, but that doesn't mean they're not Navy. They don't work for the Navy, and they don't have
Correct.
sailors on them.
Yeah. Ex fishing ships that are now largely just junk still count so long as they float and you use them in an aggressive manner, which they do. And when the entire point is to block off the Taiwanese access to their own ports and to stop commercial airlines from flying over those ships for fear of getting shot down, highly effective. What can I say? You get to blockade an island at bottom dollar.
Well, that's what they have going on at Kidman, right? Kidman has been blockaded for a while. It's just a very quiet blockade. They set up new air corridors, set up new sea lanes, and therefore Kidman is now cut off. And that's what they're working on. First responder in the chat raises an interesting point. I do believe a character in Blaine's Blue Dawn series is a refugee from Taiwan because weak Numerica didn't help defend him. That's one of the opening scenes in the series has Taiwanese refugees fleeing a Chinese invasion, and the U.S. Navy did not intervene to help them. So
and the poor Chinese guy seems like he's just doing nothing but running ambushes in the woodlines in the snowy, Vermont.
Right? He's from a nice warm jungle island, and he's stuck in.
I know, and he's stuck in the snow. Whoa, what a nightmare!
He's my second favorite Blue Dawn character.
Yeah, he's definitely in my top 5 for sure. I like him, and I like his wife too. They're kind of one of those power couples, All right, Joe. I saw you got a new article on tactical-wisdom.com. You want to talk about it?
I do. I wrote about comfort. As Americans and everything, we've gotten way too comfortable, and we see this a lot when we start doing classes. Guys are like, "Oh man, you want me to actually go up that hill, or you want me to go run down this ravine, or whatever?" That's not what I've signed up for. But we actually all should get a little less comfortable in life. I don't think that you're going to see any big action until American life gets a little more comfortable. And this conversation came out because my wife was complaining about how cold it is in Montana. Well, you have to get used to it because we live in climate-controlled situations where we go from our air-conditioned and heated house to our air-conditioned and heated car and all that stuff, and we don't use the temperature variations and all that kind of stuff. You need to. We had a guy come to class out here, and we were just doing a radio class. It wasn't even an outdoors class, and he had to walk out into the woods and do some radio conversations and come back, and he had to take like a bunch of Oxycontin just to get through the week because he had to walk a half mile. If that's your condition, you need to be doing something about it. We need to be practicing getting out and moving over rough terrain and getting around. So check out that article. It's really cool. But I wanted to also on this segment bring up something that happened over the weekend. While we were talking about the classes that we're teaching and getting folks interested in that, this guy who has a booth a couple down came over, and he and I spent the weekend chatting. And it turns out that he is also an author. He wrote a book called The Citizen Militias of the United States. I'm going to drop a link in the chat, an Amazon link to it. Real good book about the history and why the militia is an important thing and that every single one of us belong to it and that we ought to be doing something about that. So he walked over and handed me a book and asked me to kind of read it and review it for him and let him know what I think. And really neat guy. He also has a fiction series out, but cool people. That's why you got to get out and go attend in-person events. You get to meet folks you never might have otherwise. Yeah. And you need to make those face-to-face contacts because things aren't getting better, right? So get out there and check it out. And by the way, if you need a T-shirt or patches or books for Christmas, this week is the time in order to get them in time for Christmas, right? It is 2 weeks away, and you need to get them in by the end of this week. So buy some, please. Register for a class. Come on.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. All right, guys, let's jump right back into this Syria thing, man. We talked a lot about this on Friday, and let's be honest. When it comes to this Syria thing is everything we thought the Russian invasion of Ukraine was going to be, yet it wasn't. And the Russians were on the wrong side of both of those kind of disappointments. So, yeah, I guess it was on Friday we said, yeah, they're coming up on Homs. Hama had just fallen, and they're pushing straight at Homs. And then one of the things we really didn't talk about on Friday, but I noticed it, and it was kind of, I didn't know how it was going to develop, so I just kind of, but there were other Syrian resistance groups in the south of Damascus that were taking over not huge amounts of area, but towns and strings of villages and things like this. They weren't directly related to HTS, but I mean, let's be honest, every resistance group in Syria has some connection to Islam at some level. So even though they're not HTS, that doesn't mean they aren't, riddled with former ISIS members or, other Salafist, Wahhabist style a-holes who, finally got the opportunity to shoot an AK at somebody.
I don't know why you're using the left's language and continuing to call them HTS. They are Al-Qaeda.
Well, I mean, I'm just using them to differentiate them from, say, the Al-Qaeda that Osama bin Laden was using in Afghanistan. This is just the local branch. It's kind of like the local franchise of Al-Qaeda. They just happen to call themselves that. And that's the other thing too, Joe, is the other thing that makes HTS a little different from Al-Qaeda is the fact that they have a significant amount of refugees from ISIS in their ranks. A lot of those ISIS guys melted north into when the SDF and the Kurds kind of took over those areas. They melted north into Turkey, and then Turkey rounded a lot of those guys up and pushed them over to HTS. So now you've got basically former ISIS folks all over that organization as well. So it's this kind of like really shitty, super nasty terror group that is, let's be honest, it's sucking its own dick at this point with their self-flagellation of their victory over Bashir al-Assad. Now, Bashir was an absolute monster. That guy is super evil, especially as an individual, I think, because if he wasn't super evil, then all the terrible things that were happening to the Syrian people wouldn't have happened. That being said, the regime that he set up was more tolerant to just regular folks just doing their business than what HTS or any of their Islamist brethren would ever be.
I want to point a finger at the American media because they are fully in. They've jumped in the basket and they are doing everything they can to change the image of the HTS leader from a wanted Al-Qaeda terrorist by the United States to a moderate. And they're doing everything they can to help make that more palatable to the people. That man is every bit as bad as Bashar al-Assad. Every bit. Yeah.
And not only was he Al-Qaeda guy.
Yes, just for the record.
Not only was he an Al-Qaeda guy, but he was also an ISIS guy for a while too.
Correct.
So.
He was al-Baghdadi's like number 2 or number 3 guy. So.
Yeah, he was pretty high up. All right. Let's jump into this first one. Damascus now ruled by Al-Qaeda in suits as Assad emerges in Moscow. Since the overnight hours, Damascus has been under control of Islamist militants led by HTS and backed by Turkey. The country's president, Bashar al-Assad, has been overthrown and his whereabouts are unknown, though now he has subsequently surfaced in Russia.
There was a big moment where there was a pretty good chance that he had been shot down. And IL-76, about the same time, was shot down in southern Syria, but he was not on it. So,
will the country hopelessly fracture as Iraq and Libya? I think the Libya model is the most likely one. For years after their strongman leaders are overthrown, will there be mass reprisal killings? Will Christians, Alawites, and the Shia be subject to mass persecutions and extermination? Will the country, which has already been through over 13 years of horrific proxy war, descend into sectarian and factional chaos and hell? Will Sharia law be enforced by gunpoint, or will some semblance of stable transitional government emerge? I doubt it.
This is the Taliban. I mean, that's literally what you're.
Yeah, I think the Taliban, maybe like a Taliban light, is what you're going to end up with. Let's be honest, the Taliban are a unique creation of Afghanistan and the tribal regions of Pakistan, and
I think the biggest travesty in all this over the weekend was the congratulations by the United States Embassy in Syria and the statement by Joe Biden congratulating the people of Syria and overthrowing their government. Most of these people, one, are not Syrians, and two, this was not a popular uprising. This was a straight-up takeover by Muslim extremists.
Yeah,
we just stopped thinking along the lines that this was the people. This was not a Maidan. This was entirely different.
Yeah, and no matter what the U.S. government may have said out one side of their mouth, remember this. One thing is for sure, a U.S. designated terrorist has emerged as the current de facto ruler of Damascus and of Syria. At this very moment, Washington has a $10 million bounty on his head, given a career as a jihadist. Began with Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which was killing American troops in Iraq. The jihadist factions entered Damascus overnight without a fight from the Syrian army, and videos quickly emerged of armed fighters entering both presidential palace or office, as well as Assad's private residence. The state television broadcast a message that HTS leaders urging calm and stable transition of power. And then, of course, there's a curfew. I mean, is this guy going, like, if you just go down a little bit there, Watcher, is he going for like the jihadist Zelensky look here?
This guy looks first of all, I don't think anyone's ever seen him and Zelensky in the same room. Right?
I was going to say, I think Zelensky might have just found a new gig. Ooh.
Yeah, right.
Well, let's be honest. He was posing with pictures of his favorite daddy in Paris, France over the weekend at Notre Dame. So that's a tough one to swing.
This guy obviously hired Zelensky's PR firm because that's a very Zelensky-ish.
Actually. Hold on. I think I know who this is. Keep going, Joe. But I'll pull something up.
Well, I just did. But this is a PR photo, right? He talked to someone and said, "Listen, man, you got to trim the jihadi beard down. You got to take the head wrap off. You got to start looking more moderate." And hey, it's working for Zelensky to do this, and that's exactly what happened right here.
The tactical, right? The tactical gear look,
I want to point out that was me first. I am the inventor of tactical, and now all these guys are doing it.
Yeah. Well, Joe actually was the first guy to ever rock a 5'11" pants. So just so you know,
I probably
Watcher. I'm sorry.
I think I found who this might be.
Huh.
I mean, he definitely had more of a tan in that party, but
you haven't seen the sun very much. He's been fighting, living underground.
He's been in a bunker for a long time, right?
That was good. But what's funny is there's a direct one-to-one correlation between the people cheering on HTS's takeover of Syria and NAFO bros. Because exactly as Anardite said, but we owned the Russians. Stop worrying about the little things. Everyone sees this as a win because Russia had to pull out.
It's not a win.
It's not a win in the long run. This is a big negative in world history.
These are bad guys, Joe.
He's a good guy.
Yeah.
But this guy's a worse guy.
So. Yeah, Joe, Assad was a bad guy. This guy's an even worse guy. These people were terrible people. So obviously,
they're all talking about it like it's a great thing, and they're like, "Well, these guys have become moderate." They were literally beheading prisoners last week, right? They didn't suddenly change. This is the
Well, Joe,
Tulsi Gabbard of the Middle East.
Didn't you hear me, Joe? Shouldn't the America now get involved? I mean, this is important. This is terrible.
Well, that'll be next week's thing. Especially
Well,
since the guys have already come out. It took them all of 24 hours to say, "All right, Gaza's next." That was really a bad move for your long-term survival. I'm not saying Israel's right, but that was a really terrible thing to say. It is Mossad Monday, so.
So, speaking of which, would any of you like some fine radio communications equipment?
Right? I got this whole shipment of ICOM radios we'd like to send you.
Yes. All right. Let me get to this next part. So we've got some building here on fire. It says here, images show a building on fire in Damascus after a suspected air attack. It's believed that the Israelis may have struck what is believed to be a munitions depot close to the airport. The Israelis are whooping ass. And even though the governments fell, the bombs still keep falling because they have a target list that they're like, we're getting rid of all this shit before it can fall into Al Qaeda's hands.
The smartest thing the Israelis did over the weekend, and it was a brilliant diplomatic move, more so than it was militarily, but it was still a good military move, is they reached out to the Druze militias that control the southern part of Syria and the Golan Heights and said, hey, we don't really want to fight you. And if you stepped out of our way, we would set up a much stronger barrier than you have. And the Druze militias did it. So it was a pretty solid move on their part.
Yeah, we'll talk about that here a little bit later. Just kind of going through this. Of course, we've got the statue of Assad being torn down. Very much, Iraq 2004, 2003 kind of vibe. U.S. Embassy in Syria, just a couple years ago, if you go down to the next post, I think, Watcher, you'll see the one I'm looking at here. That one. Here we go. This is a tweet from the U.S. Embassy Syria on 16 May 2017. We remain committed to bringing the leading AQS figures in HTS to justice. #Syria. And this is him. That's him. Rewards for justice. So feel free to go out there and find this tweet and retweet the U.S. Embassy in Syria and say, hey, what about now?
They still offer the $10 million for him through the State Department's Justice Rewards program. I know where he can be found right now. So I'll take my $10 million, please.
Well, the irony is, and especially in the Middle East, man, they'll slit your throat and sell out their own son for, big money, payouts. That's one thing I noticed in Iraq is that, if you had money to flash in order to find a target, it was almost too easy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else in this one, guys?
I would say that this is not a done deal, not a finished story. There are other groups in Syria who still hold territory and have troops in the field who are not going to be okay with this, namely the YPG. So there's a lot still to come. I would imagine in the Kurdish areas, they are arming up and getting ready for a fight because they're probably next on the target list from the.
They're already fighting.
Yeah. And Turkey is planning an operation into there. So Syria is not over and done. This is just a brief interlude. It just becomes now, like we said, a new Libya, where you're going to have 3 different factions vying for control in perpetuity. This is not going away. And I see we doubled down overnight and said we're not moving one bit from the territory we hold in Syria. Because why not stir the pot and confuse it a little bit more?
Yeah. Let's move on to the next thing here. So Donald Trump has got a statement. Donald Trump issues powerful statement on dramatic fall of Assad regime in Syria. Let me read it here. Opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive and are now in the outskirts of Damascus, obviously preparing to make the very big move towards taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine with their loss of over 600,000 soldiers, seem incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where former President Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, and all hell broke out. The Russia stepped in, and now they are like possibly Assad himself being forced out, and may actually be the best thing that could happen to them. There was never much benefit in Syria for Russia other than to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess. It's not our friend. And this is the part I like because it's in all caps. And the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. I love this man's foreign policy.
I do like his foreign policy take on it, despite the glaring factual inaccuracies in it. It troubles me that he's buying into the leftist talking point that Russia has lost 600,000 troops in Ukraine, which is just an abject fallacy.
Well, in fairness, I think those are the numbers he's getting from the Pentagon.
Okay, and he shouldn't be buying into them.
I know. I'm just saying. I don't think that he has any point of reference to be able to go against.
Russia had been involved in Syria long before the Syrian civil war. But that's one of the points that I wanted to talk about on this is that.
Hold a second. Are you saying 600,000 soldiers in Syria?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought that because you.
No, he said that they lost 600,000 soldiers in Ukraine.
That's right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't conflating. Okay, my bad.
But let's remember what happened with Tokayev in Kazakhstan. Russia didn't allow him to fall. I don't imagine that Russia is just going to roll over and let this go by without a response. They are not happy about the loss of Latakia and Naiman. Those are both pretty major bases for them. Latakia was their only warm water port they had. So I would expect to see some sort of a Russian response. I'm actually a little bit shocked that Bashar al-Assad accepted asylum and an evacuation, because he strikes me as the kind of I'm in this all or nothing, I'm going to die here kind of guy. So
yeah,
there may be a response and there may be a resurgence of al-Assad. You don't know. He has not said, I'm no longer the president of Syria. So,
yeah, but I mean, based on what happened to Gaddafi, it looks like this is probably, the better part of valor on his part, because I don't know that there's a whole lot of forgiveness in this populace.
Again, applying Western logic to folks who are not Western peoples. So.
No, I'm just saying on his part, getting out of Dodge may make sense to me, at least in the short term. And you're right. He has not, given up his position or anything like that. Though he doesn't seem to have an army at this point, which is one of those things you need for,
Crazy thing about that, Russia knows these people who rent one out. So.
The other thing too, Joe, is that he actually may be pretty smart. It's like, okay, hey, listen, you guys want HTS to be your daddy for a while? Be my guest. A year from now, you're going to be begging me to come back.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one. This is a pretty good statement on Netanyahu's part. Let's. If you could open up the story, I think the where's the X post?
I'm sorry, which story? The next one?
The YouTube video. I'm sorry. The next one is the Netanyahu story. If you go, so Watcher, if you go to the second paragraph, there's a link that's of Netanyahu said. You see that right there? Go back up. It's in the second paragraph. Yeah, right there. Netanyahu said. Yeah, that's the one. Let's play that.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of Israel.
Joe, I'm sure you saw that the Israelis pushed out from the Golan Heights and seized positions when the Syrian army began to withdraw from
mentioned
the.
that a while ago. But
I know, I know, and so now that he talked about it, I'm going to refer directly to it. And so when they noticed that the Syrian army started pulling out of those positions, they went ahead and took those positions on. We saw some video on X of increasing the barriers and whatnot, creating new ditches. And do you think this is a kind of a, hey, we're going to get an extra kilometer or two inside of Syria as a buffer, or so that defense and depth? Or do you think this is like, hey, we need to increase our holdings here? We're gonna.
No, he was actually in that. It sounded to me like he was shopping for a second UN MNFO operation, multinational force and observers. He's looking for a UN buffer zone between them. The separation of forces agreement. Here's the funny thing: is that the one person no one is talking about is the Lebanese government, right? The Golan Heights belongs to Lebanon. It's been occupied by Syria as part of the separation of forces agreement. Because let's talk a little bit of history. So the reason why those two were right up against each other was Syria had occupied Lebanon for a long time. Israel pushed in. The Syrians pulled out of Beirut, but still retained the Golan Heights. And so it's kind of been a back and forth there over this territory that belongs to neither Syria nor Israel. But they had an agreement over who was going to hold it for security reasons to protect each other and keep more conflict from breaking out. Once Syria pulled out of that buffer zone, obviously Israel pushed into it. I don't think. I don't know. I can't speak for the Israeli government. I don't think they want even more land to settle. I honestly think that they really want someone else to step in and be that buffer, so they don't have to.
Yeah.
And they'd be perfectly happy for the UN to pick up the bill. I think that's what they're looking for. And I'll remind you that the U.S., Great Britain, and not so Great Britain, and France maintain a pretty massive amphibious force off the coast there, and it may be getting a job soon. Remember the last time we did that? It didn't go well.
Yeah, it was definitely fraught with peril. If I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember exactly where they are. There's a lot of Druze down there near the Golan Heights, not directly up against the border, but up there near Damas, and then a little further to the east of you've got Druze elements. I could see the Israelis kind of partnering with the Druze elements, and kind of, I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back kind of a situation, potentially. But I mean, that might be a little hopeful on their part. You think that there's any kind of permanent partnership ideas there, Joe, or do you think that's just something that might be convenient in the short term? But
It's the Middle East. Everything is about convenience in the short term. The
yeah,
only people I think that could be a long-term solution, and I may get called all kinds of names for this, but it's the Jordanians. They're actually the only force that would be palatable to literally all sides. But I don't think Abdallah wants that. So
yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on how much money he can make off of it. Maybe I don't
I
know.
think King Abdallah has plenty of money. I don't think he's hurting for cash. So
Let's see. Hey, Joe, we could move the Palestinians in there. That could be Palestine.
that's a great idea because they would be palatable to the Israelis 100%.
Well, it's like they would have to watch their backs. The Syrians aren't big fans of the Palestinians either. So, all right, let's move on to the next story. Syria's Assad is in Moscow after a deal on military bases. Russia says Russian state media. Let's see. Assad is in Moscow with his family after Russia granted them asylum on humanitarian grounds. A Kremlin source told Russian news agencies on Sunday. And a deal had been done to ensure the safety of Russian military bases. Russia's foreign minister said earlier that Assad had left Syria and given orders for a peaceful transfer of power after the rebel fighters raced into Damascus unopposed on Sunday.
I have to interrupt. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
the American media is pushing that stupid talking point too. Let me just make this simple for the folks who might watch this later. I know everyone in the chat now gets this, but if you just killed thousands in the last 2 weeks, including beheading prisoners and running them over with tanks, it is not and can never be a peaceful transfer of power. You literally overthrew the government. That is not a peaceful transfer of power. I'm sorry. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, it's basically they've got a gun to their head and they're like, "Screw it, I'm leaving. These people are going to murder me if I stick around."
And here's the thing: the whitewashing of this should scare you because what if? I'll just leave it at that. The whitewashing of the assassination and the whitewashing of this violent overthrow of a government.
Interfax cited the same Kremlin source saying that Russia favored a political solution to the crisis in Syria. The source said negotiations should be resumed under the auspices of the United Nations. Russia's ambassador to the international organization in Vienna said that on his Telegram messaging channel, breaking news, Bashar al-Assad and his family is in Moscow. Russia does not betray its friends in difficult situations. Let's see. Syrian opposition leaders had agreed to guarantee this. This I found interesting, Joe. Syrian opposition leaders had agreed to guarantee the safety of Russian military bases and diplomatic institutions in Syria, the sources told news agencies. But some war bloggers said the situation around the bases was extremely tense, and the source did not say how long the security guarantee lasted. What's interesting there, Joe, is that the leaders of a movement can guarantee all kinds of things, but those angry guys on the ground with machine guns pointed at the Russians, if they didn't get the memo, then they didn't get the memo.
Yeah, all it takes is one guy who decides, I'm going to pop me a Russian grape today, and the fight is on. Russia's got probably, I don't know, somewhere in the order of 1,100 Marines there, and then a whole bunch of Navy personnel.
Yeah.
Not much of a force. It's a very capable one, far more technologically advanced than who they oppose, but those rebels just got a whole bunch of shiny T-90 tanks. So, well, they're probably not shiny. They're probably dented up and banged up a little bit, but they did get them.
They are Syrian T-90s.
Yeah.
Let's see. A deal to secure Russia's Hamim air base in Syria's Latakia province and its naval facilities at Tartus on the coast would come as a relief to Moscow. Joe? Do you think Russia tries to make a deal and retain that Navy base, because that's a huge piece of real estate for them. That's that warm water port in the
There
Mediterranean.
already is a Navy base, but at this point, it's not in use. All of the surface combatants have left, and same with the air base. All the aircraft flew off. They might be back now, but it's not running. They're not operating.
But I know. But I guess my point is that once this settles down, it would be interesting to see if they try to retain that.
Well, I'm sure they will. I mean, it's their only way of ensuring their shipping can get through the Bosphorus Strait, because their other base is in Novorossiysk and Sevastopol. They're a long way away, right?
Yeah.
They don't have anything on the other
Sea.
side of the Bosphorus Strait. This is their only outlet. So they're certainly going to want to retain it, and they'll cut any deal they can. And that deal may very well have been, hey, man, you have to take Assad off of our hands, right?
Or they may say, well, yeah, you keep the base, you give us Assad back. I mean,
I don't think Russia would go for that, because then that destroys their ability to do diplomacy throughout the world.
Right.
If it becomes known that you'll turn them over. That's something the U.S. would totally do and has done, but that's not something the Russians will do.
Let's see. Military president down. Influential Russian blogger who's close to the Russian Defense Ministry has said that the situation around the bases is serious cause of concern for Moscow. Russia's military presence in the Middle East hangs by a thread. What anyone decides in high offices is absolutely irrelevant on the ground. Russian warships had left Tartus and taken up position off the coast for security reasons. The airbase had been effectively cut off by the rebels who took control. I wonder where they'd fly those the fighter aircraft to. Probably Iran would be my guess, if they had to fly them out. Russians.
No,
what's that?
The Russians, you mean?
Yeah.
No, they'll fly them into the Black Sea to their bases there. Probably.
Well, I mean,
Iraq. So.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of how they would get there if they had a contested kind of route.
Turkey. Turkey would let them.
I would assume they would too. Yeah. Reuters could not independently confirm Rybar's assertions. On Sunday, the Russian foreign minister said that the statement that the two military facilities had been put on a high state of alert and played down any immediate risk. There are currently no serious threat to the security. All right. Maybe the guys on the ground might disagree, but hey. As a result of negotiations, let's see, participants in the armed conflict on the territory of the Syrian Arab Republic, he decided to resign from the presidency and left the country, giving instructions for a peaceful transfer of power. Once again, not peaceful, but I mean, that's what he's calling it. I guess when you're a Syrian authoritarian dictator, this is as close to a peaceful transfer of power as it gets.
Well, again, we're trying to whitewash the term. I get what he's saying. He's saying, now that I'm gone, maybe don't kill all of my people. I get that.
Right.
But the American media is whitewashing it for a different reason. They want a peaceful transition of power to look different than what you think.
Yeah, because they don't care about whitewashing the transition. They want to whitewash the HTS guys coming in and say, oh, these guys are great. Look at their suits.
Freedom fighters.
He's Zelensky. He's a Syrian Zelensky.
It's like how before he was a bad guy, Osama bin Laden was an anti-Russian militant, right?
Yeah.
Rather than an Islamic terrorist, which is what he has always been.
Well, it's also a little bit about it. And I won't say it's the same, but it's kind of similar. It rhymes a little bit. The romanticization of like Che Guevara, a complete and total waste of human flesh. How he made it on so many T-shirts, I don't know. Maybe it's because girls think he's attractive, but ultimately he's a communist murderer. And
I find it ironic that the genderqueer movement has adopted Che Guevara as one of their heroes, and he hated gay people.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yes. All right. I want to move on to this next article, which is a little more of a kind of 30,000 feet, what's going on with Syria and how it fits into the kind of forever wars. This is authored by Pepe Escobar. He says, until recently, a serious geopolitical working hypothesis was that West Asia and Ukraine were two vectors of the standard hegemon modus operandi, which is to incite and unleash forever wars. Now, both wars are united in an omni-war. Let's see. Coalition of Straussian neocons in the U.S., hardcore revisionist Zionists in Tel Aviv, and Ukrainian neo-Nazi shades of gray is now betting on a final confrontation with several overtones ranging from expanding Lebensraum to provoking the apocalypse. He said what stands in their way essentially is two of the top BRICS countries, Russia and Iran. So, the idea that he's tying all these together is kind of like tools of the kind of globalist cabal. I'm not there yet, but I can see where he's coming from, and I think he makes some arguments worth listening to. China self-protected their collective lofty dream of community, of shared future for mankind, warily watches them from the sidelines as they know that at the end of the road, the true existential war by the hegemon will be against them. That's actually a good point. Meanwhile, Russia and Iran need to mobilize for Totalen Krieg because that's what the enemy is launching. He goes subhead here: undermining BRICS and the INSTC. The total destabilization was heavy. CIA, MI6 input now proceeding in real time is carefully engineered gambit to undermine BRICS and beyond. Joe, this is one thing that this absolutely is Obama's baby. The collapse of Syria. It could have been an organic internal event, but very quickly became a CIA-funded civil war that just
with CIA-funded elements fighting DoD funded elements.
Right. And then, oh, by the way, you had the whole, it was linked in with that whole Arab Spring movement, which was this kind of larger color revolution within the Middle East.
Funded and directed from certain places in Washington.
Like Foggy Bottom.
Yeah.
So this is also a war to destabilize the international north-south transportation corridor, of which there are three major protagonists are BRICS members, Russia, Iran, and India. As it stands, the north-south trade corridor is totally geopolitically risk-free. As a top BRICS corridor in the making, it carries the potential to become even more effective than several China's cross-heartland corridors of the Belt and Road Initiative. This INSTC would be a key lifeline for a great deal of the global economy in case of a direct confrontation between the U.S.-Israel combo and Iran. By the way, Joe, have you noticed the pipelines that could potentially now go through Syria from the Middle East to Europe?
I'm sure that's purely a coincidence, bro.
I'm sure Assad would have done it if, the price was right. And now the price will definitely be right. Especially with Saudi Arabia involved.
That the pipeline's going to sit on?
Say that again.
Is BlackRock buying up the land that the pipeline will sit on?
Oh, don't get me started.
We can't get a hurricane in there, but we can get the next best thing. Anyway.
Turkey under Erdogan, as usual, is playing a double game. Rhetorically, Ankara stands by a genocide-free and sovereign Palestine. In practice, Turkey supports and funds a motley crew of greater Idlibistan jihadis trained by Ukrainian neo-Nazis in drone warfare. And that's one thing. Have you noticed, Joe, there was a lot of drone warfare in this. Now, maybe they learned it from watching it on the internet, but I'll be honest with you, the Ukrainian trainer thing, between the markings that we saw in those videos early last week and the drone video footage we saw, I think that's pretty plausible, don't you?
Yes.
I don't know that it makes sense why you would want to train people outside of Ukraine versus defending your country, but hey.
Oh, I can make that make sense for you. Hey, what have we seen the Ukrainians do consistently throughout the war when there are Russian troops in a country other than Ukraine?
Oh no, I got that. I know why they did it. I just don't understand that is a really important thing. It's more of a propaganda victory than anything.
Oh no, we've been saying that for all of these little things that have happened. But if there are Russian troops in another country, the Ukrainians will send people out to try and schwack them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If this army of mercenaries were real followers of Islam, they would be marching in defense of Palestine. Well, that's interesting that we actually saw some call for that. Clearly, they haven't got the memo from the Zelensky of the HTS, letting him know that we're going to be good little boys and girls under Salafist Islam. At the same time, the real picture inside the corridors of power in Tehran is extremely murky. There are factions favoring getting closer to the West, which clearly would have ramifications for the axis of resistance ability to fight Tel Aviv. So, with this being a kind of a Turkish and Qatar and maybe even in some cases Israeli-backed, Joe, Hezbollah is completely cut off at this point.
Hezbollah what?
Hezbollah is completely cut off at this point as far as from their lines of supply.
I disagree, but okay. There's a lot of smuggling that comes in over the Jordanian border.
Well, sure. But that's not the highways that were coming through Iraq and through Syria,
Yeah, but you have to look at an actual map of who controls what territory. Airplanes are a thing. And not to throw a negative aspect on some things, but Middle Easterners aren't the best at operating their air defense systems. So you can fly planes in a lot of places that you might not be able to if they were controlled by a Western military, let's just say, or the Russians. So once Russia shut off their S-300 systems, you could fly all kinds of things in there. And part of their agreement by Russia is probably that, hey, don't worry, we'll continue to help you with air defense, which will allow certain planes to get through to Hezbollah. I'm not thinking Hezbollah is going to have a supply problem.
Well, I was kind of thinking just more of the scale. They'll still be able to get things, and there will be especially ships coming in, Iranian cargo ships that come in. But ultimately, the trucks coming across, with the Quds Force guys coming straight through Iraq with the Popular Mobilization Forces backing them up and all that kind of stuff, that will be cut off.
Yeah, but I will point out that they withdrew those troops too, so they're not there anymore. Those Hezbollah troops were withdrawn along with the Iranians who withdrew over the weekend. So where do you suppose all those combat-hardened Iranian and Hezbollah troops went? They didn't go to Iran.
I was going to say, as far as I can tell, they went back to Iraq. But ultimately, what'll be interesting is
a lot of them went south. And that's probably why Israel put up the security buffer, was to try and stop that. But it had already happened.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them ended up in the West Bank. So...
I think that's more likely maybe Bekaa Valley,
does that really change it from an Israeli perspective?
Well, it's it's less in the heart. I think the West Bank is a little more, dagger at the heart versus, you could at least say Lebanon is outside the fold.
How long of a drive is it from one to the other?
I don't know. There's a lot more defenses along the northern border than there are, I think, between the West Bank. I guess we could argue the details, but ultimately, I think this does change the calculus for Hezbollah.
The point is that Hezbollah is back in the Palestinian territories, I think, is the point that I was trying to make. But yeah,
I just haven't seen I just haven't seen any evidence of that.
Have you seen any evidence that they went to Iraq?
No, I'm saying the ones that were in Syria, that were linked up.
I know, but you said
so.
So here's the thing, though. I said they went into the Palestinian territories. You said they went into Iraq, and your argument that I'm wrong and you're right is that I haven't seen any evidence of it. So what evidence have you seen of them going back into Iraq?
I guess I was talking more about the popular mobilization forces going back into Iraq. Like the Iranian forces and those guys going back. Now Hezbollah, I think, goes back to Lebanon. That's where they're from. I mean, Hezbollah is always in Lebanon.
So when you began, you were talking about Hezbollah.
I said they went to the Bekaa Valley.
And I said Hezbollah went back to the Palestinian territories. And you said, I haven't seen the evidence of that. I think they went into Iraq. So that's why I'm confused here. You didn't change the group.
I guess I think we're talking circularly, but my confusion was that when you said the Iranians and the PMF or the PF, popular mobilization, PMF moved. I think they went back to Iraq. I think Hezbollah,
absolutely 100%. I don't disagree with that at all.
And I think the IRGC guys in Damascus most likely either flew out or they went into the Bekaa Valley and are now holed up in Lebanon. That's where I think they are most likely.
And that's what I said.
I thought you said the Palestinian territories in Israel. The West Bank.
The Bekaa Valley is in the Palestinian territories.
But you said the West Bank, though.
Yeah, but you're splitting hairs at this point. They're back into the area where they are a problem for Israel. Is all I'm saying. I mean, you're
fair enough. No, that's fair. Yeah, like I said, I think we were just kind of arguing past each other at that point. All right. I don't know how interesting that whole thing was for you guys in the chat, but I apologize for my part of it. All right. Just kind of going on here. 2,400 years later, we see governments, armies, and mercenaries still plunging into the endless West Asia wars. So, yeah, Joe, the funny thing is the more things change, the more things stay the same in this piece of land, right? Like call them whatever you want. The Palestinians and Islam didn't exist back in the time of the Greeks and the Romans, but you had armies tromping in between these various points and strongholds, going at each other with the locals absolutely willing to kill each other in job lots at the same time. So the irony is that not much has changed in since the time of the biblical times.
Right, Romans, then the Greeks, and then every other possible European group that has come through.
Well, and you had Zionist rebels, you had, rebels of all kinds. You had the Persians come in, you had the Ottomans, it's just, a who's who of people who have crossed the Middle East, have gone through Syria. Anyway, so the irony is just that Russia, Syria, and the U.S. are just another in the kind of, people who have decided to expend political and military power in this area, and I don't think anything's going to change 50 years, 100 years, 500 years from now.
Correct.
All right. I think I got one more here. This is okay. So this is the U.S. piece of this, and this helps transition us to the domestic topic for today. U.S. bombs 75 ISIS targets. U.S. bombs 75 ISIS targets across Syria after Assad throwdown. And so it's like on one hand you had Israel bombing Syrian military targets, specifically arms depots and things like this. And here you've got the U.S. bombing ISIS targets. Now, I thought ISIS was gone, Joe.
No.
What the hey?
I think here that we're really just taking advantage of the chaos and the lack of other air defenses in the area. And by the way, this is also us helping out Al-Qaeda. We're going to take out your last remaining enemy other than the Kurds, because we're sitting next to the Kurds, so we can't stab them in the neck yet. We have to help eliminate ISIS for Al Qaeda. So.
CENTCOM stated on X the strikes against ISIS leaders, operatives, and camps were conducted as part of an ongoing mission to disrupt, degrade, and defeat ISIS in order to prevent the terrorist group from conducting external operations and to ensure that ISIS does not seek to take advantage of the current situation to reconstitute in central Syria. I guess it's just one of those kind of things that ISIS has been kind of hanging out in the hills, decentralized and kind of dispersed for the last 10 years. And, so anytime you've got the Syrians distracted by something else, it gives ISIS the opportunity to kind of reconstitute itself a little bit. So I was being facetious to say that ISIS is still there because, of course, they've been there the whole time. What's one of the reasons why we stay there is because we can't quite kill them, it doesn't seem. It says here the operation struck over 75 targets using multiple U.S. Air Force assets, including B-52s, F-15s, and A-10s. The battle damage assessments are underway, and there are no indications of civilian casualties. Especially given the presence of B-52s in the operation, this is clearly a large-scale operation, but it begs an important question. Washington chooses now to very belatedly to go after ISIS. Yeah, so that's it, just it. These ISIS formations were there a week ago, a month ago, probably last year, and the Biden administration just let them kind of sit there. There hasn't been a U.S. operation of this scale going back perhaps half a decade at least. A theory, perhaps now that it's mission accomplished with the Assad government overthrown and with Damascus in the hands of HTS jihadists, ISIS no longer needs to pressure Assad and the Russian forces. The Pentagon is now much belatedly dealing with Daesh terrorists. That I could see that, and specifically from a political standpoint, that makes sense.
There's two reasons here. One, maybe there was a deal made that said, "Hey, you know what? If we assist the Russians in getting Assad out, we'll take care of this problem for you." Or, with Assad gone, there is no longer a reason for us to hold territory there. So we decide let's churn up a whole bunch of dirt, kill a few janitors and whatever else we can do, and say, see, everyone, remember, ISIS is still out here. The boogeyman is here. We need to continue to hold these oil fields.
Yeah. Recall the Obama era in Syria and the West Gulf allies fueling the rise of ISIS with tons and tons of weaponry passed around to the Islamist insurgents that made up the mainstay of the anti-Assad opposition. Let's see. Yeah, let's play this John Kerry audio there, Watcher. Can you hit play on that? This is from September 16th, I guess.
Some of this is care about and we don't have a basis. Our lawyers tell us unless we have UN Security Council resolution.
Is that Watcher connection or is that the audio on this is that bad?
Russia is invited.
The audio is pretty garbage, so.
Here, let me listen to it on my end to see if it's.
By the legitimate regime was illegitimate.
Well, it's not roboting.
Regime.
Can you go back to the beginning? Just go back to the beginning because it was roboting really bad.
Well, the problem is the Russians don't care about international law, and we do. And we don't have a basis, our lawyers tell us, unless we have a UN Security Council resolution, or unless we are under attack, or unless we are invited in. Russia is invited in by the legitimate regime. Well, it's illegitimate normally, but by the regime. And so they were invited in, and we're not invited in anymore. The only reason they're letting us fly is because we're going after ISIL. If we were going after Assad, those air defenses, we have to take out all the air defenses. And we don't have a legal justification, frankly, for doing that, unless we stretch it way beyond the law. But Americans don't believe sending Americans over to die in the country. That's the Congress won't vote to do it.
All right, push
And
pause,
none of
watcher.
us
It's the
will
audio
try
is
to
rotating.
help.
Anyway, so basically, what he's saying, he's justifying the fact that what the whole point of us going there was, was the fact that we're going after ISIS and not to help Syria. We weren't invited. And there's a quote here. It says, "We've been putting an extraordinary amount of arms in Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, a huge amount of weapons coming in, a huge amount of money." So that was kind of our contribution to fight against ISIS.
It sounds a lot like saying people only loot because they're hungry. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Illegal activity is justified because of whatever, right? Hey, the guy was a healthcare CEO, so it's okay to kill him. Crazy.
It says here, on Sunday, President Joe Biden finally addressed the rapidly moving events in Syria, with Assad having fled to Moscow. At long last, the Assad regime has fallen, Biden said. The regime brutalized, tortured, and killed literally hundreds and thousands of Syrians. At the same time, it's also a moment of risk and uncertainty. Oh, you think? You put a bunch of terrorists in charge of Syria and maybe risk and uncertainty? U.S. would support Syria's neighbors, including Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Israel, should any threat arise. This moment of considerable risk and uncertainty, but I believe this is the best opportunity in generations for Syrians to forge their future free of oppositions. Joe, is there any way that this thing doesn't end to just absolute bloodshed?
No.
Yeah, I can't see it either. I mean, there may be some peaceful relations over the next year or so because everybody's kind of fought out, but I think they're going to go directly at the Kurds next, honestly.
Well, and let's remember, as I pointed out earlier, they control the western half of Syria. They don't even control the majority of the country.
Yeah.
So this is not the win everyone is painting it as. It's not an overthrow of all of Syria. There are still parts of Syria occupied by other groups that are not friends with HTS. So,
and
the end of conflict in Syria.
The oil regions are mostly held by the Kurdish forces at this point, I think that's going to draw. I'll be honest with you. I think we're going to see a Turkish incursion into the Kurdish areas.
100%. Yeah.
And it'll be the Turkish army fighting the Kurds, not like their proxies. But their proxies will fight too, probably, but more from the kind of nipping at the heels aspect. This is a quote from Erdogan. He says, there are only two people left among the leaders in the world, me and Putin. I have completed 22 years of office, and Putin is close to that. All the others have been eliminated or left. I guess that's a longevity statement. I don't know that speaks to your quality, Erdogan. All right. Anything else you want to talk about with the U.S. involvement in all this? Because I think we could go ahead and transition to the domestic topics here real quick.
Yeah, we're an hour and 44 into it. I'd say it's time to move on to the next topic.
Let's do it. Former Secret Service agent warns Trump likely to be attacked before inauguration. Wow, Joe, this is almost like he's been listening to you.
Right? Like, wow, this is probably the least amazing prediction ever. Everyone knows that Donald Trump's going to be attacked before then. It's just a matter of how severely and how successfully. And I think that this cult of personality arising around an assassin is setting the stage. It's
exactly right, Joe. I mean, this is a really weird movement that's kind of popped up around this guy. And it's like, well, hey, if he can assassinate this guy, surely we can assassinate Trump, right? I mean, come on, that's the thing. That's what the left are going to call for. And this is going to get, good people killed. Former Secret Service agent Ricker Staropoli warned Thursday that Donald Trump could be targeted in an attack before his inauguration as president, and that Secret Service may not be able to prevent it. During a Fox interview, he suggested that Trump could face a threat of a much bigger magnitude than the 2 assassination attempts earlier in the year. He said that he's not confident at all that Trump could be kept safe. The Secret Service that you see out there today is not the Secret Service of yesteryear. Interesting. Somewhere along the line, they completely dropped the ball. That testimony that you saw today was purely a smokescreen to cover up shortcomings of a politically compromised agency. He was referring to testimony in the House by acting director Ronald Rowe. Yeah, that was the one where they got in the big shouting match. You remember that? Where the House, the congressman was saying, you just wanted to strut around on camera. It should never have gotten to that point. Those who talk about all of these drones and these UAVs, hey, that's all great, but you need to get back to basics. What made the Secret Service great was the ability to put a human intelligence manpower on the streets and effectively secure the environment and make it safe for the president of the United States. I don't see that here. Yeah, I think he's got a good point there. I mean, Joe, it's one of those kind of things that a drone is a great tool, but ultimately, if you don't have the mindset of security around it, then you're always going to miss something, right?
Well, and protective intelligence is a thing. He pointed out them getting human intelligence assets out there to actually find these threats beforehand. That used to be something that the Secret Service was exceptionally good at. And in this new era, they seem to have just flipped the switch and turned that off. So I don't understand why.
Yeah.
We lost
yeah, I know. I maybe his connection's bad. There he is, coming back. There he is. Watcher, you back?
Maybe.
All right, I'll continue on. Okay, there we go. I thought maybe the goats jumped on you and knocked out your internet or something. Let's see. Yeah, there's the yell. I don't want to play this. This is those guys. Let's see. Well, you think that the argument on the house in the House was worth playing, Joe?
Not really. It doesn't really
I
add
only
any
listened.
value.
Yeah, I didn't. I only listened to about 30 seconds of it originally, and I just. Yeah. So yeah, I thought this was interesting. That somebody with his experience would come out and basically say what we've been saying, Joe. Like we're some kind of crackpots here or something like this, talking on the internet. You know, who are we, right? What do we know? But here's a guy that is a valid media source. Who's saying the exact same thing. Makes me think that we're probably closer to the mark than. Let me be honest with you, Joe. I wish we weren't that close to the mark.
Yeah, some days it sucks being so right. And you know what? We failed to take a victory lap on the Syrian collapse because we called it almost to the day. You called it almost to the day.
Yeah, so. Yeah. That first, them taking Aleppo was absolutely brutal, and that was kind of keyed me in that something was a little different here. So, yeah. All right, let me move on to the next one here. I'll have to share my own things now that the watcher is
struggling with the internet.
Struggling, yeah. Let's see. There we go. Pentagon alert: U.S. runs out of missiles in a matter of days in China war. Can't match production. You don't say.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned that like 15 times that we were not going to last very many days. I know a number, but I'm not going to put it out there. But yeah, hyper war is a thing. Tom Clancy first coined that phrase in The Bear and the Dragon. The rate at which we would expend munitions in a major war with someone like China or Russia is way understated. So.
And you know, they're showing 155 shells being made here, and yeah, 155 shells are important, you know, but ultimately that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about smart weapons. We're talking about anti-aircraft missiles. We're talking about anti-missile missiles. We're talking about Tomahawk cruise missiles. We're talking about all the really smart
Anti-ship missiles. Yeah.
anti-ship, right? The aircraft missiles that you put on all of your fighter jets and stuff like that. All these great technological wonders are no value if they run out
You
of
guys,
bullets.
those are those famous 155 hollow points right there.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that'll mess up your day.
Exactly right. Well, that'll do to a chest cavity. Let's see. American defense industries lack the capacity to supply the missiles and other weapons needed for a war with China. The U.S. forces would lose the conflict as a result. Members of Congress and private defense experts warned Thursday. The House Select Committee on Chinese Communist Party recently held a simulated conflict with Beijing that revealed the U.S. military would quickly run out of bombs, missiles, and other weapons within days of a war. Pentagon has identified China as the U.S. military's pacing challenge, and I agree with that. The growing risk of war with China over Taiwan or other flashpoints in the Indo-Pacific was the backdrop for Thursday's committee hearing. Members and experts called for emergency measures to rebuild the American defense industry to avoid an armed clash with Beijing. Our defense industrial base lacks the capacity to deter and win a fight with a PRC. Let's see. Mr. Moulinar said the U.S. defense firms cannot innovate rapidly, and supply chains for key defense components are vulnerable to China's coercion and manipulation. He called for bold new policies, significant resources for the defense industrial base. You know, Joe, if these companies had every material and raw good that they needed, they still wouldn't be able to keep up. But, oh, by the way, a lot of these raw materials come from where? China.
Who just banned their export to the United States.
Oh, yeah, gallium and I think germanium were the two, but it could be something else. I don't know. Let's see. Representative Raja Krishnamoorthy of Illinois, the ranking Democrat on the committee, said the simulation of a conflict with China revealed significant gaps in defense production capacity. He said U.S. defense industries rely heavily on three minerals that China primarily supplies. History tells us we need a healthy defense industrial base now to deter aggression. God help me, Joe. I'm agreeing with a Democrat.
Right. I'm looking here in the story. Representative Raja Krishnamoorthy of Illinois. That's a really good Chicagoan name right there.
You got that right. I don't know. Maybe that's Champaign-Urbana, territory or something like that.
Goes to my argument that the Indians are colonizing the world and no one cares.
Let's see. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan voiced similar concerns on Wednesday. He said that given current stockpiles, the American munitions would be exhausted quickly in a China conflict.
And now you have to couple that with the fact that China can turn out ships at a rate of about 100 to 1.
Yeah, actually, I think it's even worse than that. But yeah, you're right on the money, Joe.
China will just outlast us.
God forbid we get into a full-scale war with the PRC, Mr. Sullivan said at an event hosting for the SCIS.
That would have
CSIS. I'm sorry, say again?
That would have more weight if I felt that he actually believed in God. Anyway. Yeah.
CSIS, but any war with a country like PRC, a military like the PRC, is going to involve the exhaustion of munition stockpiles very rapidly. Mr. Sullivan said the United States must build up stocks of vital munitions and components required to produce them on a short notice. And the U.S. defense industries must close the gap with China's larger scale defense weapons production capacity.
Here's the thing. China can read. And when they see statements like this shortens the timeline for them. They know that we're working on a plan to fix our problems. So why would they wait?
Yeah. Christian Bros, chief strategy officer with the autonomous weapons maker and Duriel. That's right. This is the what is it? The Lord of the Rings name. Industry said that for decades. Yeah. Yeah, Palantir. That's another one. All these tech companies using the Lord of the Rings names. U.S. and allied military powers have produced increasingly small numbers of expensive platforms and weapons that are costly, slow, and difficult to make. War simulations show that the U.S. military will run out of weapons in less than a week of war with China. The war in Ukraine has also sharply drawn down the stores of the U.S. weapons. Now, Joe, one thing that I can say with some authority is that military leaders are aware of this problem. Yeah, this is not something that like people are just not like whistling past the graveyard on. This is absolutely something that's in the foremost of key leaders' minds in places like the Asia Pacific theater. So it is good to know that people are talking about this, because you got to talk about it. You got to come up with these ideas that there is a need for some legitimate defense industrial production. Kind of ramp up. American and our allies are increasingly lack the industrial capacity to deter and, if necessary, fight and win a great power conflict. Now, I'm not a socialist, Joe. I mean, you may have noticed that. But there are certain types of businesses that the government should absolutely stimulate within the borders for the purposes of national defense. You can't leave critical national defense, supply chains to foreign sources.
Yes. It's almost like outsourcing it to your enemies was not a good idea.
Right. All right. Anyway, this goes on. I'm not gonna continue to read this. I recommend you guys check it out. This is a Washington Times article, and it actually does a good job of kind of diving into this from a legitimate standpoint. Of course, it's a Washington Post argument. Washington Times is actually the good one. Washington Post is the bad one.
Correct.
But so anyway, I would give this article a look. It's pretty interesting. I won't continue to belabor the point. Watcher, are you back with us?
Yep.
What's your thoughts on this?
It's the same point I've been making for years and years and years and years. Our incredible hyperfixation on weapon systems will get American servicemen killed in massive numbers, and there's almost nothing we can do about it, because the pivot to lower tech, higher efficiency weapon systems is not instantaneous. It's probably going to be a decade if we started today, before we didn't have. So, for instance, like javelins are great; they're amazing. Do you know how much a javelin costs per shot versus an RPG?
Yeah, they're a lot.
There's the point about shipbuilding is amazing, but one of the points I'd like to make about that is I don't think we personally here in the U.S. do we turn out more than 100 ships a year, period, including pleasure craft? Because I don't think we do.
We don't. That's what I just said.
It's not like we have some massive shipyards that we can uproot and start turning to military production.
Oh no, we have the shipyards.
We make our own subs. That's about it.
Yeah.
The irony is that if we were turned to our allies that could make ships very quickly and in high quality, like the South Koreans, then you're literally putting your shipyards within the range of intermediate range ballistic missiles of China, right? That doesn't help. Okay, sure, Canada might help us out a little bit, but the massive shipyards of Canada, I don't think they're known for that.
I also point out that China has a fairly competent submarine force, And Russia has an incredibly competent submarine force. I know everyone likes to make fun of the Russians and everything, but the submarine force is where they have always invested the most money and the most training. So literally everywhere is within range of even shorter range missiles that you can't detect in time, do anything about. So
yeah, and it wasn't the Russians that were banging up the nose cones of their attack submarines. Oh no, that was us.
that was us. Yeah, that was us.
Well, that sucks. $100,000, by the way, Watcher, is how much a javelin costs. The clue costs 500,000 though. That's the sighting mechanism.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's jump into this. This is the final thing for the day, guys, and so we'll just go as long as you guys have the interest. Joe, I don't know if you've seen this, or Watcher. I think Watcher, you said you had not seen it. There was an interview with President Trump with NBC's Christine Welker. It was an hour and 16-minute long interview, which is that's the kind of longest interview he's done recently. So I thought it was good. It was the description of the tweet here is, it was a masterclass by Trump. Welker exposed herself as a complete idiot. Here are a few insane moments. So let's just kind of let's just go down and just start with the first one and see what we have.
Still have the federal minimum wage at $7.25, and I actually have a map. 19 of these states actually voted for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it
Yeah.
right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House, for these 19 states that voted for you, are you going to raise the federal
It's a very low
minimum wage?
number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though.
Yeah.
In California, they raised it up to a very high number. And your restaurants are going out of business all over the place. The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it. Absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if California went crazy, they went crazy. And the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So I hear you saying, similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider, is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things. So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work because you have places where it's very inexpensive to live, where a minimum wage, which is at $8 or $9, might have very little effect because the cost of living in certain places is really low.
So a couple of points on this.
Yeah.
Minimum wage is meant to be minimum. If you apply yourself and do better, you should never settle for minimum wage. It is not meant to be a living wage. You're taking merit and personal responsibility out. You're responsible to better yourself to earn a better wage. Just the way it is. But two, this is a trick of the left, believing that a federal minimum wage means something. The federal minimum wage only applies to the federal government and federal contracts. It doesn't mean if the federal minimum wage is $25 an hour that the restaurants have to pay $25 an hour. They do not. Mm-hmm. So it's just a fallacy that there's a federal minimum wage that actually applies to every job in America.
Well, and this is one of the reasons why so many teenagers, when we were in high school, it seems like everybody had a job, especially in the summer, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not the case anymore because a lot of those jobs are gone because the minimum wage have priced teenagers out of the workforce, especially in areas like he was mentioning that have higher costs of living. So they have these higher, like California, New York, places like this. I mean, it's like nobody wants to pay a unskilled 16-year-old who's never going to show up for work $15 an hour.
It's funny, as Ron points it out here, they act like there are all of these minimum wage jobs out there. The effective minimum wage is what's important. For example, in Michigan, the effective minimum wage is $18 an hour, even though the state minimum wage is $10.25. You can't hire anybody for under $18. Kalispell, Montana, it's around $21 an hour. So to go get a job at a retail place or McDonald's, you're making $21 an hour because they just can't hire you for any less.
Yeah, because the
minimum wage is a non-issue.
Yeah. So. 100%. And, it destroys jobs that could otherwise exist. All right, let's go to the next one.
One more thing. It's also a communist fallacy, because what happened in the Soviet Union is the kid handing out the towels at the bathhouse made the same money as an accountant, because they just had one wage for everyone. You were just assigned a job. And so therefore there is never any personal sense of accomplishment or need to improve. It's silly.
All right, this next one here is about birthright citizenship. The interesting thing to remember here, because this is in the tweet that this is attached to, and it's good to remember. The 14th Amendment says this, Joe. It says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States, right? That second clause there kind of would tend to, edit out, illegal immigrants, right? Illegal immigrants wouldn't be applicable under the 14th Amendment. So knowing that, listen to what she says.
Citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
Get a change.
You've promised to end birth.
So she selectively edits out the that part, as if like, hey, I don't have to actually quote you the real Constitution. I'm going to come up with my own version and apply that to my question. She's a fucking idiot.
She is an idiot. I agree with you. What's funny is that she does the true liberal woman, crazy woman stare, which they think makes them seem more authoritative, where their eyes are wide open, like they're in panic. And it actually just makes it look like Donald Trump is owning the situation. He is, but it makes her look afraid of Donald Trump.
Yeah. The next one's a little longer, but I think it's a pretty good one. Let's watch this one.
Peeling and replacing.
When John McCain let us down by voting, and Murkowski and Collins and whoever it was that voted against, but they really let us down. They did us a great disservice, because we would have had great health. Obamacare is lousy health care. It's very expensive health care for the people. It's also expensive for the country, but for the people, it's lousy health care. When John McCain gave his thumbs down after saying for 10 years that he wants to repeal and replace, okay? And then he came out, put his now famous thumbs down, and he became a hero to the left. Let me tell you, if we find something better, I would love to do it. But unless we find, but one thing I have to say, I inherited Obamacare, or anything else you want to go. It's got about 20 names, but I inherited it. And I had a decision to make with Health and Human Services. I had a big decision to make. Do I make it as good as we can make it, or do I let it rot? And a lot of political people said, let it rot and let it be a failure. I said, that's not the right thing to do. And I had very good people in the medical area that handled that. And I said, what do you want to do? He said, we really have an obligation to make it as good as we can. And we did. We made it as good as we can make it. Instead of making it bad where everybody would be calling for its repeal, I made it so that it works. Now,
but you did try to overturn it, sir.
It's
you did
lousy.
try to overturn it. You did have your Justice Department try to direct the Supreme Court to overturn it.
We got a little bit of a surprising opinion, to be honest with you. If it would have been overturned, we would have had much better health care right now. But right now, we have something that I made the best of. I could have made the worst of it, and it would have fallen by the wayside. I did the right thing from a human standpoint. But, I'm sort of proud of my decision. At the same time, sometimes I regret it. I told the people, and I gave them the money to do it. I said, fix it, make it work, because people would have suffered. But it's too bad that they voted no. I wish John McCain, I wish he fought for 10 years on replacing Obamacare for 10 years, and then he voted against. Nobody understands it.
Sir, you said during the campaign you had concepts of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for healthcare?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Still
But-
just concepts?
but-
Do you have a fully developed plan?
Let me explain. We have the biggest healthcare companies looking at it. We have doctors. We're always looking because Obamacare stinks. It's lousy. There are better answers. If we come up with a better answer, I would present that answer to Democrats and to everybody else, and I do something about it. But until we have that, or until they can approve it, but we're not going to go through the big deal. I am the one that saved Obamacare, I will say, and I did the right thing. I could have done the more political thing and killed it. And all I had to do is starve it to death.
You did try to have your Justice Department effectively kill it, though,
No.
sir.
Kill it from a legal standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, I made it work.
In your concepts of a plan, sir, will people with pre-existing conditions still have coverage? And can you guarantee their prices will not go
The
up?
answer is yes, they'll have coverage. You have to have it.
And what about their
Because
prices?
you know what?
What about their prices, sir?
I want the prices to go down. I want to have better health care for less money. And there are ways of doing it, I believe. And I have the smartest people in that world. You know, that's a separate
one quick
world.
and easy
unto
trick will
itself.
do it.
I have the smartest people in that.
Killing Obamacare will lower the price of insurance 100%. Those of us who actually had insurance programs that we paid for ourselves, which is supposed to have been everybody, but our insurance went way up to fund those who never had insurance so they could get the federally mandated insurance cheap. If you take the federal government out of health insurance, boom, health insurance prices go down because the requirement to compete all of a sudden exists again. When we put in Obamacare and we had federally mandated prices and rates for everything and all of that, it removed competition from the actual playing field. It's communism, and it doesn't work.
Let's go on to the next one, Watcher. This one's getting a little in the weeds.
Talk about Project 2025. This
Okay.
is the conservative policy blueprint. You disavowed it during the campaign. You called it a product of the radical right. You've said some of their ideas were abysmal.
I said some of it is. Some of it is very good. Some of it's very mainstream, actually. Frankly, the Democrats should have used some of it because they went, with all the transgender that they were doing or with the men playing in women's sports. Well, if they wouldn't have done that, maybe they would have done better.
Well, so you take me to my question. You're now giving people involved in Project 2025 prominent roles in your administration. Are you changing your mind about Project 2025? Is this now the policy blueprint for the second Trump administration?
Some people, if you take a look at the group, it was hundreds of people were involved. And I was actually, I reprimanded the whole group. I said, you shouldn't have placed this document in front of the voters because I have nothing to do with it and I'm the one that's running. You had no right to do this where you put 1,000-page document in front, and many of those things I disagree with. Now, many of those things I happen to agree with. Many of those things Democrats should have agreed to, and I think they would have done much better in the election because they got slaughtered.
Well, I guess people see the list: Russ Vought, Brendan Carr, Peter Navarro, John Ratcliffe, Pete Hoekstra, Monica Crowley, and they think these are all of the people who were involved in or writing Project 2025. This must be a blueprint for work requirements, eliminating the Head Start program, criminalizing pornography. Is that what we can expect?
Well, I don't know how they voted. I don't know. I never spoke to them actually about it, and I purposely, and I told you, normally it would be just the opposite. I'd review every page. I purposely didn't even want to see it because when somebody like you asked me a question about Project 2025, I can honestly say I've never seen it. I have nothing to do with it. I didn't read it, but I did hear some things in there that I would totally disagree with. And I said to the people that were really
Watcher,
he should have opened with that. Stop giving Project 2025 life. Every time they bring it up, you say, I can't speak about that because I have nothing to do with it. I don't know anything about it. And that's where he should stop. Instead, he's allowing her to bring it up, and all of a sudden it becomes an issue. And the biggest thing she took issue with in the whole thing was making pornography illegal. That is the silliest piece of it and makes no sense. But the Project 2025 has always been a plant to smear him. It was never a real thing. No one really thinks that way. And all that they're doing is ensnaring him in that trap today. And he should have just said, look, I'm not going to speak about it because I had nothing to do with it and it is irrelevant. But he falls for the trap of wanting to be liked, and he argues every point. So,
yeah. Let's see how far. Let's hear where he goes.
You know who those people are?
He's made his strongest point, in
You
fairness
have
here.
no right doing this to me, because they used it as a soundbite, the Democrats. And I don't know, it couldn't have been too effective because they got slaughtered, but they did use it as a soundbite.
But to people who see, oh, he's bringing in all of these people from Project 2025, he must know what it is.
Well,
you know what?
I don't know what it is. No, I don't know what it is.
You still don't know
but
what
I
it is?
heard
All these
certain
people
things
are
that I
coming
didn't
in
like.
your...
And by the way, I heard certain things that are phenomenal. Okay?
Like what?
Like law and order. We want law and order. Okay? Little things like, let's put prisoners in jail. Let's not let people come out and raid every drugstore in Manhattan so that we have to put glass up and every store is going out of business.
I mean,
she laughed when he suggested law and order.
Yeah.
Crazy.
All right. What's the next topic? We'll see if we want to get into any more. Oh, this one is actually my favorite. This number 9, Watcher. Let's play number 9, and maybe this will be the. Well, I don't know. I think 9 is short, and so is 10. So let's do these two.
Everything. So childhood vaccines have prevented about 4 million deaths around the world every year.
I think that's great. I'm all for it. I think it's great. Hey, look, I'm not against vaccines. The polio vaccine is the greatest thing. If somebody told me get rid of the polio vaccine, they're going to have to work real hard to convince me. I think certain vaccines are incredible, but maybe some aren't. And if they aren't, we have to find out.
Everything. So childhood vaccines.
Wow. I mean, here's the thing, Joe. When he says things like this that are absolutely the most common sense things ever, this just shows how stupid these journalists are, because they either they are so obtuse that they can't, understand what he says, or B, it's just they are absolutely trying to, you said A, but I'm going to paint it as if you said B. Right, which actually I don't know what's worse, stupidity or malicious, but
it's maliciousness. And the reason why the left always goes with vaccines and any opposition to vaccines is bad is it's not about healthcare. It's about authoritarianism. They want the ability to mandate that you do certain things and you must do what it is that they want you to do, rather than you as a citizen of the United States being free to make your own decisions about what you do and do not do, whether it be healthcare or anything else. Vaccines are just one symptom of it. It's like in Michigan, the opposition to charter schools. They don't want you in a privately run school. They want you in a state mandated education system where you only learn what they want you to learn, which when you look at the basic system of schools, it is to listen to the authoritative person, the teacher, follow the schedule and be in certain places at certain times. That's what we're really teaching in school.
All right, Watcher, let's play this next one, and this will be the last one.
This is your first interview since you won the election.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations to you.
I hope you do well with it.
Yes, and sir, I don't have to tell you this because you've talked about it. It comes at a time when the country is deeply divided. And now you're going to be leading this country for the next 4 years. For the sake of unifying this country, will you concede the 2020 election and turn the page on that chapter?
No. No, why would I do that? But let me just say, if you say the country is deeply divided, I'm not the president. Joe Biden's the president.
But you're going to be the president.
No,
That's right.
I'm not the president. So when you say it's deeply divided, I agree. But Biden's the president, I'm not. And he has been a divider. And you know where he divided it more than anything else, and it probably backfired on him, I think definitely, is weaponization. When he weaponized the Justice Department and he went after his political opponent, me. He went after his political opponent violently because he knew he couldn't beat him. And I think it really was a bad thing. And it really divided our country.
And let's be honest, no one's divided over the 2020 election. Almost everyone agrees on that. We're divided over the other things, right, that they've told you to be divided about. LGBTQ agenda, race relations, the war in Ukraine, all that stuff are what we're divided over, not the 2020 election. And I love how he answered that. No. If they get you to concede one step, they will get you to concede the rest of the way. Don't concede ever to them.
You know, Joe, the irony is that he was only half right. You know, Joe Biden's the president. America's divided. It's Joe Biden's fault. Well, let's be honest. Joe Biden's been asleep at the wheel. The American media is absolutely responsible for probably the lion's share of division in this country today. And the reason why Donald Trump won is because we have finally broken out of this dependency on mainstream media for our sources of information. People are turning to more authoritative and trustworthy sources, and they're finding them out there on the internet, whether it's the Joe Rogans or other various podcasts or, you know, independent news reporters, some of the pay services. I mean, you know, some of the streaming services like, you know, Glenn Beck's kind of thing, you know, but people are finding the truth and they're rejecting this narrative from the mainstream media. Kevin Dorr for $5. Hey, look at the first super chat of the day right at the end of the show. When in the last 4 years has a journalist been as frantic and aggressive questioning Biden? Or never? It's never happened, and that's the reason why the journalist and the media is responsible for this division that's going on.
100%.
Yeah, Jon Stewart said it best of the mainstream media. Your business model is arson, though I've seen him with matches. Yeah, 100%. It's disingenuous for Jon Stewart and what's the other one, Bill Maher to say, oh, well, I'm above this. Well, kind of, sort of, you aren't, right? You know, it's you know, you've come around at this point.
Let's go to the tape and see, and it turns out they're wrong.
Well, in fairness, Bill Maher's been pretty much, you know, against a lot of the stupidity that's been out there in recent years. But, you know, he was in the 2000s. He was pretty, you know, pretty forceful with his leftist views. All right, guys, thanks for bearing with me here. I wanted to make sure we got through some of those because I thought that those clips were good. It's nice to see Trump actually communicating out there and owning the media. I don't care if he owns the libs. He needs to own the media.
The libs and the media are the same thing.
I know. I'd like to see him ignore these. I give each one interview and then that's it. It's like it's podcasts for the rest of the.
It's been working for Joe Biden. I don't know why he wouldn't do
it. Not doing interviews.
Yeah.
Well, but Joe Biden doesn't talk to anybody because, well, I mean, you've seen the state of him. All right. Okay, let's go around the horn. Joe, we've got an interesting week ahead. You're getting ready to go into the holiday season. That could be good things. It could be bad things. What's your take?
I want to talk about the Daniel Perry verdict. It's going to come. Everyone says that, hey, BLM's going to go off the chain if the verdict doesn't go their way. They're going to go off the chain either way because what they're actually mad about is the dropping of the manslaughter charge. And by the way, that's a crazy turn of events when you have a hung jury. And so then they say, okay, well, we're willing to drop manslaughter. Go try it again. That's an odd thing. But if they drop the manslaughter, they've literally got nothing on Daniel Penny. So something bad is going to happen either way. So I'd watch for that this week.
Yeah. Watcher.
Yeah, there's reports all over Europe and various other places of governments suspending Syrian asylum applications now that the Assad regime is no longer in place and beginning to implement mass deportation programs. I believe the times there are changing, gents, and I'm somewhat, for the first time in a long time, optimistic that Europe potentially has a future other than as a conquest state to the caliphate. We shall see.
Yeah, I think could be some interesting things come out of that. The other side of that, though, is that if this thing turns into a charnel house like I expect it to, watch the Europeans say, "Oh, we can't send these poor people back to that. No way."
Hey, listen, I'll agree that Washer's mic was a little scratchy then, but is the blasphemy necessary? Come on, man, clean it up. Anyway, don't bring Jesus into this. But yeah, I say we cancel everybody's asylum application who is here out of fear of the Assad regime. They can go home now. Go make your country a better place, and we'll thank you for it. So.
Yep. All right, guys. I'll be honest with you. I think the next shoe to drop. Turkey's gonna invade northern Syria, and they're gonna go after the Kurds. I think specifically it'll be a PKK kind of, and I think they'll go for the oil fields. Is where I think they'll strike. Of course, going after PKK terrorists is a great excuse, but having the oil field.
That's good.
Good response there, Stone. I feel like
let me second that. Stone, a guy stayed here at the camp, a guy from Spain, and his name was Jesus. And I had forgotten his name when I went to introduce him to Mrs. Tactical Wisdom. And I said, "What was your name again?" He said, "Jesus." But if you want to tell everybody that Jesus stayed at your camp, that's fine too. I'm like, you know what? That's it. You're Jesus for the rest of the time you're here. But that's funny. Anyway, carry on.
I was just going to say that it's going to be like Turkey's going to show up and say, "Hey, we came for the PKK guys. We're staying for the oil." And just don't shoot at any trucks that have an American flag on them. Americans stay out of the way, and you won't cause any trouble. I think that's what we'll see.
Well, here. I would like to end it with just one fun headline. Have y'all seen this?
Yeah, that one has just been amazing to me. I shared this last night. I was like, I passed it over the dinner table. I'm like, read this, and she was like, I don't even know where that's coming from. Right? That is the weirdest diversity-friendly jihadists. Jihadists are well known for their acceptance of diverse opinions. Right.
Well, it's the diversity programs that the State Department kind of pushed. They want to make sure that there's all kinds of different Muslim terrorists in the same group.
In this particular photo, CNN was all fawning over because, like, oh, he was a jihadi wearing camouflage, but now he's wearing a blazer. He's wearing a blazer because his shirt's covered in bloodstains from the last dude he beheaded. Oh my God.
All right, guys, that's all we got for today. I apologize for going over the time. Joe Watcher, you're very gracious. Thank you very much. Chat, you guys were awesome. Make sure you continue to just be yourselves there in the chat. Stone, you keep referring to your Mexican gardeners, and you'll probably be okay. Guys, if you haven't done it already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you're sharing the link out to the channels for whether it's Rumble or YouTube with your friends. Let them know you're getting some good stuff on here. Let them know that, hey, if they don't understand what happened in Syria, just point them back to our episodes. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then today. And you get the whole Syria saga. And we were right on point. So I don't know what more to, we give you accurate predictions. So hopefully.
Somebody on Twitter said that everyone's reading this Syria thing wrong. I'm like, bro, you've obviously never watched our show.
We read it like a coloring book.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, gents, as better personal policy, we might want to start looking into poly market when we make these predictions to start making ourselves a little money. I'm just saying.
Start putting some money on this stuff. All right. That's all I got for today. Guys, thank you very much. Chat, you're awesome. As always, stay safe.